Michigan coaching search, it feels like it's entering week 13, but really it's just been a week. So what's the latest here? Well, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama has repeatedly made statements now. He released a statement on Sunday, I think it was, and he said pretty much, I'm happy here. I'm not going anywhere. I don't plan on going anywhere. And that should have been good enough, but it wasn't good enough. And so then Monday he had a press conference in Tuscaloosa, and he was asked by one of the reporters there. I think it was Nick Kelly, I think. And the question was, are you going to be the head coach at Alabama next year? Great question. Right to the point. And DeBoer answered it, but he did what Meemaw would call hem-hawing. He hem-hawed around the answer. And friend of the program and bloodhound Alabama beat reporter Charlie Potter circled right back around and said, hey, just to follow up on Nick's question, are you going to be the Alabama head coach next year? And Kalen DeBoer said, yes. Yes to Nick. Yes to Charlie. Now, a lot of us listened to that and thought that that was good enough. Understandably, the folks at Michigan have a job opening, and they think Kalen DeBoer would be the perfect candidate for it. So it is within their constitutional right to continue their coaching search and to not give up until someone looks them in the eye and says, no means no. Well, that wouldn't happen until at least Friday or Saturday because Alabama's got a football game this Friday against Oklahoma, and if they win, then you have a whole new can of worms that you have to open and deal with. But even if they lose, that's the earliest theoretically. If you believe in a world where Michigan still got a shot at Kalen DeBoer, that's the earliest that it would happen. I've maintained the same stance on this particular dynamic throughout the duration of this coaching search. And that is, I don't think there's anything to Kalen DeBoer to Michigan. Feel really good about that. Have had several conversations about it. I totally understand where Michigan's head is at on that. And if you guys want to wait and get an actual no from the man himself, maybe you'll get that Saturday, or maybe you'll have to wait much longer. But when the time comes, I think the answer will be no there. And I feel pretty good about that. Now, Kenny Dillingham's name has also floated. And I said several days ago when asked, I said to someone who was asking what's the difference in Kenny Dillingham putting out a statement of denial and Kalen DeBoer. You know, someone asked, I think on the Sunday show, what's the difference in Kalen and Kenny? They've both denied interest. And I said, well, there's a big difference. And I don't really know specifically what you're alleging has been said, but I can tell you there's a pretty big difference. And as time has gone on, and you've listened to the guy in Tuscaloosa talk about this versus the guy in Tempe, Arizona, they're in different situations. There are things that, you know, Kenny Dillingham would love to have at Arizona State that, truth be told, he probably doesn't have in terms of support. And I don't mean support emotionally. I don't mean like Arizona State's heart's not in it. I mean, he's competing with Texas Tech, and he has a fraction of the resources Texas Tech has. And so that's not the only program they lag behind. So you're only capable of what you're capable of, and it wouldn't mean anything if this was in a vacuum, but it's not. Kenny Dillingham may have a shot at the Michigan job, and so he's doing what probably anyone else would do. He is looking and kind of intrigued at the possibility. Earlier today, they had practice out there for their bowl game, and for the second time in a few days, Kenny Dillingham was available to media after practice. We've got some sound. I'm going to play it for you, and then I'll react to it on the other side.
I think my job is to try to do whatever I can for the people that are with me, right? The people that are in the foxhole, the coaches that are in the foxhole with me, is I got to do whatever I can to fight for those people, for my family, for everything from that perspective. And kind of, you know, and I love it here. I've said that since day one. That's absolutely never changing. Absolutely never changing. So, yeah, that piece is never changing.
Pretty clear, to me at least, what's going on there is Kenny Dillingham is like the most brutally honest coach in America. I know Kenny. I know him fairly well. He's a very straight shooter. Even when it probably works against his own best interests, he's a pretty straight shooter. And so it's not hard. There aren't layers that you have to peel back to figure out where his head's at. You may have to read between the lines a little bit there, but I'll read between the lines for you. He knows that he's on Michigan's radar. I don't think he has spoken to Michigan because I think there's a pecking order in the Michigan coaching search, and I don't know that Kenny's at the top, but I think he's near the top. And I think that, you know, once those dominoes unequivocally fall, I think they already have, but according to Michigan, maybe they haven't. So once they unequivocally fall, then I think maybe it's Kenny Dillingham's shot to listen. I will also tell you this. There's a perception out there that Michigan need only pick up the phone and Kenny Dillingham's on the first thing smoking to Ann Arbor. I don't find that to be the case. I think they'd have a reasonable shot at landing him. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion because, as I said, everything you're hearing him say about Arizona State is accurate. Kenny Dillingham is not looking to leave Arizona State. That dude loves it there. There is a root system planted there with him for a number of reasons. One of the beautiful things in college football is when a guy that is uniquely tied to a program exists at that program. Brent Key, Georgia Tech, perfect example. Clark Lee, Vandy, perfect example. Well, Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State is a perfect example. So someone who lives in Spokane, Washington may look and say, dude, if I could have Arizona State or Michigan, it's Michigan. It's a no-brainer. To you, it would be. Hey, do me one favor right here. Look down. Are you subscribed to the channel? If you are, thank you. If you're not, please click subscribe. It helps us keep the show free and free of corporate interference. All right, that's it for me. Back to the clip. But that's all things being equal. All things aren't equal with him. He has strong ties to Arizona State. So it's going to take a lot to get him out of there. Michigan has a lot to offer. And that's why you listen. And he may very well listen to them if the time comes and choose to go. All I'm saying is I've maintained and I still maintain there's a very, very different dynamic in play with Kenny Dillingham in Michigan than there is Kalen DeBoer in Michigan. And I don't think any of that's ever changed. I think that's been the way it's been the whole time. There was a lot of talk earlier today about Jedd Fisch. There was a lot of talk, like I was looking over on the fort. It's over on the Michigan On 3 site. Chris Ballas and those guys are updating by the second, not just by the minute, by the second over there. And there's been a lot of talk over there today. And by the way, look, if you're a Michigan fan, I don't know how you're not checking this thing at least 30 times a day, maybe even 30 times an hour. But that's your personal business. You live your life however you want to. I know I am. If you're looking at my web browser history, I'm over here a fair amount because I'm fascinated at what people are thinking during coaching searches. So there has been some sentiment about Jedd Fisch. There's been some thought this week, and granted it's only Tuesday, but there's been some thought this week that Jedd Fisch's name may be climbing. And that's because Michigan was taking a hard look at him. There's been some sentiment today that, hey, man, maybe Jedd Fisch's name has cooled. I think that's accurate, and I think they've done a fairly good job, especially if you're on the forward over on the message board over there. I think they've done a fairly good job of detailing that. Not necessarily details that I think it's important for us to dive into. It's more minutia-based. The critical take-home points here are, I don't know that Jedd Fisch is going to be a factor in the Michigan search moving forward. He's got himself a good job at Washington. It's one of the better jobs in the Big Ten. In fact, Jedd Fisch may have one of the more underrated jobs in the country. So it's not like he needs to be desperate to leave Washington. But I think his name was a factor. I'm not so sure it's going to be a factor moving forward. I think Eli Drinkwitz's name is involved here. Okay, you need to understand where we're sitting. Where we're sitting is, this is a premier job with several question marks attached to it. And I'm trying to be as fair as I can. I've got immense respect for the Michigan job, the Michigan program. I would view it extremely highly. It would be one of my top 5 destination jobs if I were a head coach. You cannot ignore the internal investigation going on. You cannot ignore the uncertainty with the AD. You cannot ignore the administrative uncertainty right now. Now, those aren't stop signs. Those could be roadblocks, potential stop signs for coaching candidates. You don't know because you're not talking to them. And so unless you were to be able to sit down with them, you don't really know how much it matters to them. If you're a Michigan fan, you're very quick to brush past it because you hope that's how people feel. If you're an Ohio State fan and you're watching the Michigan search, you probably make a huge deal about internal goings on and whatnot. So the only thing that matters really is the perspective of the potential hire. And they're not talking publicly about that. So you're kind of left to wonder. The situation is this. It would probably take a perfect confluence of events to get Kalen DeBoer out of Alabama anyway. And if he looks and sees even a whiff of that, he's probably turned off by it. This is me guessing. He's probably turned off by it. Okay, so let's cross that name off the list. Maybe Kenny Dillingham looks at it and says, it was going to take the perfect situation with no questions to draw me out of my home, Arizona State. And There are just a few too many questions there. Thanks, but no thanks. So you cross that name off the list. I don't think Jedd Fisch is going to be an option for him. And my point here is, which other candidates are we looking at? Do you really want to go after Jesse Minter, knowing that you're probably always going to have to fight against the NFL for him? Is there a mystery candidate that we're not really aware of? Very well could be. Coaching searches get really fun when there's a talk of a mystery candidate. Remember how Kalani Sitake didn't really come in out of the rafters in the Penn State coaching search until late in the game. So there could be that. But if there's not that, names like Eli Drinkwitz get thrown out, and people are really quick to scoff at it. I've noticed this. And my question is always, whoa, 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 whoa. What, you're scoffing as if you have definitively better options. Do you? So I would ask, do you? Now, if you tell me DeBoer is a better option, of course he is. Can you hire him? You may tell me you think Dillingham's a better option. Maybe he is. You know, I may lean Kenny slightly there. I think a little higher of Eli than many of you do. So, but I would still lean Kenny slightly. Can you hire him? In this scenario, you couldn't. Jedd Fisch, we think, is off the board now. So, like, how far down the list do you go before you just kind of throw your hands up and go interim route for 2026 and start your coaching search in the summer? Like, you just have a long runway, a year-long coaching search. I have always been baffled by people who turn their nose up at the concept of Eli Drinkwitz. Eli Drinkwitz, it's well known in the SEC, is one of the better staffers in the country. Staffers meaning a guy who knows how to identify coaching talent and hire them and put him on his staff. I mean, LSU saved their program defensively by raiding Missouri. They went and got Blake Baker, American hero Blake Baker. Kevin Peoples came along with him. And everyone's looking around saying, wait a second, if these guys are so great, why were they at Missouri? Well, because Eli Drinkwitz is really good at identifying talent and bringing it in. He just had an offensive coordinator, I believe, leave. Like it's always a turnstile there. Some players leave via the portal, coaching talent leaving via the portal. And so I'm looking at it and I'm always thinking to myself, got really good personnel there as well. Always a scrappy team. Haven't won a national title, haven't won the SEC, but like they probably punch a little bit above what they should be punching at Missouri. Those are all the hallmarks of a good head coach to me. Not to mention, it's kind of fun. You know, he'll give you a soundbite every now and then. Like I'd have no problem with Eli Drinkwitz being on my coaching hot board. That's just me. So that's where we are with the Michigan head coaching search. My guess and the pretty widely held belief in Michigan circles is this is going to ramp up this weekend, pending the outcome of the Alabama game. And I'm sure Kalen DeBoer is tuned into the show. Kalen DeBoer is probably looking and saying, oh, wait a second. He's like Leo pointing at the TV. Like, what? What? I thought I already rid myself of this. Nope. You're gonna have to meet him on a tarmac in Toledo, Ohio somewhere, or maybe like Frankfort, Kentucky in the dead of the night, and you're gonna have to look him in the eye in the terminal and say no. And then you have rid yourself of it. In that scenario, you also just lost to Oklahoma and your season's over, so probably not a fun weekend.